Welcome back to the channel. My name's Greg. Today I'm going to show you how I made this smoky, rich, delicious chicken and sausage gumbo. This gumbo is going to take just a little bit of planning ahead. If you want to make your own andouille sausage, that's going to be the first thing. I've got a video right here, how I made my andouille sausage. Audio was a little messed up on that video. My apologies, but it's a damn good sausage. If you can't find andouille, try to find another smoky Cajun sausage. And in a pinch, any smoky sausage will work. A smoky kielbasa. The key is you want a very smoky type of sausage. Next, we got to think of what kind of chicken we want to use. You certainly could go buy a rotisserie chicken and just use some pre-made broth, either homemade or store-bought. What I like to do is cook a chicken and make my own broth at the same time. Just throw a chicken in a pot with some onions, some celery, a few garlic cloves, cook it for about an hour, pull the chicken out, keep cooking the bones. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to grill my chicken and use those bones to make the broth. So let's get started on that. Well, to grill chicken, you got to get a grill going. So I got my coals, they're all gray, looking pretty hot. Gonna just keep them on one side here. My rack on, let it burn off a little bit. Let's go get the chicken ready. First thing I want to do, this chicken, so I want to cut down this backbone. Forgot about that guy. Just going to nick this bone right here, and that's going to help him flatten out. That's all I want, is a nice flat chicken. And I'm going to pat it dry. Don't forget to dry under the arms. Now I'm going to sprinkle it with some salt. Put the chicken down on kind of the hottest part of the grill. Now I'm going to cover it with the air holes above it. I want to keep this real hot for the first few minutes. Get some real nice char, real nice color on that chicken. For about 15 minutes, I gave it a flip here. Put a little color on. It's just going to give it a little more flavor. You know, even though the andouille has a lot of smoke flavor, the cold smoke flavor is different than the hot grill flavor. There's a lot of different flavors you can get from cooking with fire. Anyway, put the lid back on this and let it keep cooking. Once the chicken's cooked, 165 degrees in the side of the thigh, I pulled it off the grill. Now I'm going to let it cool so I can pull the meat off the bones. Then I'll use those bones to make a broth. While that chicken's cooling down, I'm going to start getting a few vegetables ready for my for this broth here. Just going to roughly chop a little bit of celery. It's fine to use the leaves and everything, no problem there. Throw that into a pot. Going to take a couple of onions. Like to cut off the roots and that top side. You don't really have to peel these for the broth. The finished meal is going to be a dark color, so we're not trying to have a clear broth. It doesn't really matter. So add a little color to the broth. Straight into the pot. And you don't need to cut them up too small or anything. It's all just going to be extracting the flavor. Celery, onions in the pot. All right, carrots. You often find carrots in chicken broth, but what we're going to do with the carrots for this chicken broth is we're just going to get this shit out of here. It's got no place in Cajun cooking. Green peppers are the other part of what they call the Cajun Trinity. Onion, celery, and peppers. But peppers and broth tend to put off a bitter flavor. So we're going to put these aside for now as well. The only other thing I'm putting in here for now is a little bit of garlic. And I'm just going to, again, peel the outer skin. Not going to worry about the skin on every clove. It'll be fine. Those are going straight into the pot. Now I'm just going to pull this meat off the bones. And then the bones just go in that pot. Man, even this breast meat, this is perfect. You get that breast meat, that juicy, without even brining it. That's a beautiful thing. Now look at how juicy. I mean, for breast meat, come on. Yep, got that little bit of smokiness from the grill. It's different than smoked chicken. It just has a different flavor it lends to the finished product. Glad I went through the extra effort. But if you didn't feel like grilling the chicken, just put your whole chicken in this pot and then separate the meat after an hour and keep cooking your bones for a few more hours. I'm going to set this aside because I'm not going to use it for a few hours. It should probably go in the fridge. Now I'm going to take my pot with my bones and my veg. And I'm just going to add a little bit of thyme and a few peppercorns, and a couple of bay leaves. Now I'm going to cover this up with about 8 cups of water, 8 or 10 cups. Get it on the heat. Oh, I covered that up with about 10 cups of water. I almost forgot to add my chicken neck. If you have a neck that came with your chicken, toss it on in there. Now we're going to bring that up to a simmer. Let it simmer away for at least 4 hours. The more time, the better. So this is the kind of simmer I want for my broth. Just very occasional bubble. Don't want it rolling. Just an occasional bubble breaking the surface. That's all. Now that we know what we're doing about the andouille sausage and the chicken in the broth, we need to talk about the roux. Roux is a mixture of fat and flour. It's a thickener, but it's also going to give us a lot of flavor. A roux can be anywhere from light to dark and any shade in between. You get a dark roux by cooking it longer. The traditional way is to cook it on a stovetop, but that takes a ton of stirring. You've got to constantly stir it. It's very easy to scorch or burn. And once you've done that, you've got to start over. There's no way to fix it once you've burned your roux. Today I'm going to make my roux by borrowing a technique commonly used in restaurants. And I'm going to make my roux in the oven. You can use basically any neutral oil that you'd like to. You can use butter, although butter tends to work better with light roux, because with the long cooking, the milk solids separate, can cause problems. I'm going to make my roux today using some lard I rendered. Because if you process a whole pig, no matter how much salami and sausage you make, you're going to have extra fat. I made my own lard, and that's what I'm going to use for my roux. Gumbo is going to take a dark roux, going to take a while to make. The one thing about doing it in the oven is it takes considerably longer than doing it on the stovetop, but it takes considerably less hands-on time. So now that our chicken stock's going, let's start on this roux. Making a roux in the oven couldn't be much easier. I'm going to take 1 cup of flour. I'm going to take 1 cup of really any oil. I'm using lard, but any neutral oil works great. Just going to mix that together. I'm going to cook this in a 350-degree oven. And it's going to take a lot longer than it would on the stovetop, but I just got to stir it every now and then instead of having to constantly stir it. Like on the stovetop, you really got to constantly stir it. But in the oven, just going to stir it every now and then. You can see the color it is now. If you just cook this for a few minutes, you have like a white roux. If you cook it a little longer, you'll get a tan roux. If you cook it long enough, you'll get like a chocolatey colored roux. Main thing is not to let it burn. If you want to cook it on the stovetop, it's the same thing. 1 cup, 1 cup. You just got to stir it a lot. Like I said, if you scorch it, you've ruined it. You got to start over. Anyway, into a 350-degree oven. We'll see how long it takes. What I've got here is my Cajun cheddar, a couple of onions, a couple of green peppers, and some celery. While my roux and stock finish cooking, I'm just going to dice everything up. I like the cheater method of dicing onions. One method has you cut across, cut in, and then you just dice it. But the way I like to do it, it's kind of the cheater version, is you cut across. Not pole to pole, but the other way. You know, from the equator to the equator, I guess. And then I just make my dice chops like this. Just kind of go up and over the rainbow. So again, it's pole to pole, top to bottom. Don't do it that way. Go the other way. Cut it in the size dice you're looking for. I'm going roughly 1/4 inch. And then we just cut it up and over the rainbow. Try to go about even. Get to the center. Just flip it over. And while that's not quite as even, it's only 2 cuts across instead of 3. That much quicker. That many fewer tears. Green pepper. Second pepper. Just like to kind of follow my way around. Cut that little piece off the bottom. Get any of this white part of the rib. Stack them up. Cut some strips. Turn it sideways. And then I take that little bottom piece and cut it up too, because waste not, want not. Peppers are expensive these days. Cajun cheddar, green peppers, onion, celery on the bottom. I'm going to go check on that roux, see how it's doing. Oh, it's been 1 hour, giving this a stir. I don't know, I'd call that maybe a peanut butter color. Somewhere between tan and peanut butter. It's a lot darker than it was when it went in, but it's nowhere near the chocolate brown color that I want it to be. So, gave it a stir, back in the oven. Like I said, this can take several hours depending on your oven. That's why I got the chicken going and I'm making my own broth, because it's going to take several hours too, but it's very hands-off time. So back in the oven, I'm going to go keep watching the Super Bowl. All right, I've got a bunch of garlic cloves. Garlic I have here is kind of, I don't know, I'd say it's average size, so I'm going for a bunch. If I had a big cloves, probably go for like a half a dozen big cloves. What seems large to one person might be average to another. And what's average to one person might seem large to another. At the end of the day, just use how much garlic you want to use. That's my pile. Probably about 1/3 of a cup. But, you know, it's just cooking. You do you. That's how much garlic I'm using. Now I'm going to use some green onions. Just going to cut off their tails, or the roots. Plants don't have tails. Plants have roots. And I'm going to keep the green and white parts separate. So I'm just going to thinly slice these white parts. And I'll set those aside. I'm going to save my green. These are going to go on at the end. So I'll set those aside for a little bit. It's been just about 4 hours in the oven at 350 degrees. And this is the color of my roux now. I would call that a brown roux. It's maybe not a dark brown roux. Probably put it up on medium heat on the stove and just stir it a lot. But I think I'm going to call that dark enough. Start making my gumbo. 5 hours into this gumbo making process, I really don't have very much time hands-on involved. I got some charcoal going, cut a chicken in half, threw some salt on it, and put it on the grill. A little while later, I flipped it once. When the chicken was done, I pulled it off. Not a lot of hands-on time. When it cooled off, I pulled the meat off the bones, threw the bones in a pot with some roughly chopped vegetables, covered it with water. Not a lot of hands-on time. It's been on the stove for hours now, but it didn't take me that much hands-on time to make it. And the roux, if you do it in the oven, you just have to stir it every 45 minutes or so. Pretty hands-off. Took a little over 4 hours to get the brown roux I was going for, but not a lot of hands-on time. I did spend a little bit of time during that process prepping for the next step, actually making the gumbo. So let's make some gumbo. All right, I've had it on my stove on medium for just a few minutes and stirring almost constantly. And that's the thing about making it on your stove, is you have to stir almost constantly. But I'm going to say, I'm done making my roux. I'm ready to start making my gumbo, which is going to be adding that holy trinity. So that was the celery, green peppers, and onions. And I'm just going to let that cook down for about, well, till they soften. I think it'll take about 10 minutes, give or take. I'm going to pull as much of this out as I can easily do with this little spider tool. I'm going to do that off camera so I can just put it right into my compost. Because this stuff here, it's done everything we wanted it to do. It's given off all of its flavor. There's really nothing left here for us. So this is going straight to the compost. Be right back. Actually, if you get these garlic cloves out of the stalk, they're still pretty tasty. Everything else, got most of the bones out, pouring the rest through this strainer. And then I'm just going to pour my broth back into my pot, because even though this is food grade and rated for the hot liquids, I don't really like leaving the hot liquids in my plastic container. There's my chicken broth, ready for gumbo. Okay, I've had the Cajun trinity cooking away here about 10 or 12 minutes on a kind of a medium-low heat. They're softer. And you can see the roux has actually gotten a bit darker as it continues to cook. This is about ready to start adding the broth. So a minute or two before, I'm going to add my garlic and the white parts of my green onions. Mix them in and just give them a minute or so. I'm also going to add a tablespoon or so of Creole seasoning. You can use your favorite Cajun seasoning, Creole seasoning, or make your own. I'll show you how I made mine. I'm going to start with some black pepper. 1 part black pepper, 1 part white pepper, and 1 part cayenne pepper. I'm going to go 1 part onion powder, 1 part garlic powder. What makes Cajun and Creole different? Creole going to tend to have some more herbs. So I'm going to go 1 part oregano, 1 part dried basil, and 1 part thyme. Oh, except that I realized I wanted to go 2 parts garlic powder. To that, I'm going to go 3 parts paprika. And I'm going to use a smoked paprika because why not? But you use what you want to use. I'm just going to mix this all together. And you'll notice there is no salt. And that's because I like to add my salt separately. You know, sometimes you might want more spice, but not more salt. Just keep that in mind if you're substituting your favorite Cajun blend or Creole blend, as many of them are going to have salt already added. So once my garlic and the white parts of my green onions have cooked a little bit, and my Creole seasoning is at a minute to hydrate, I'm going to start adding my broth. I'm going to add it like 1 cup at a time, stir it until it's incorporated, and I'm going to add another cup. And another cup. That's 3 cups so far. Number 4, stir it till it comes together. I'm going to go with 5 cups for right now. This gumbo is probably not going to use quite all the broth, but it's going to use most of it. Some Cajun and Creole seasonings come with salt in them, or the recipes call for salt. So this is the time, depending on what you used and how much, where we're going to want to taste it, add salt, add black pepper, and add more Cajun or Creole seasoning if we want. Definitely needs a lot of salt. I'm going to give mine a pretty good couple pinches of salt. If you bought a rotisserie chicken and store-bought broth and you use the store-bought Cajun seasoning, you might not need to add as much salt as I added. But I am going to add a lot of nice little healthy bit of pepper. I'm going to add just a little more Creole seasoning. This would also be a good time to add a couple of bay leaves. And I'm going to add about a teaspoon of thyme. Now I'm just going to let all these flavors get to know each other for like 45 minutes or so. And then I'll add all the proteins. But speaking of proteins, time to get the andouille ready. Which in this case, it's just I'm going to cut, I don't know, about 1/4 to 3/8. I'm going to cut some fairly thick slices for mine. About a 1/4 inch. Because, you know, they're big. This is a girthy sausage. That's pretty impressive. I don't know anyone who'd be unhappy about having a sausage like that. And look at the fat in it. It's a fatty sausage too. But as it cooks in the gumbo, all that fat, it will render and become soft and succulent and pretty exciting to eat, actually. So this andouille sausage, did make it myself. So if you want to see how I made this andouille sausage, go check out my video. Andouille sausage in general, it's very smoky, and it's got usually a bit of a kick to it. It's usually used to flavor a dish. So this is going to bring plenty of smoky flavor. That, along with the smoky flavor from the chicken and the broth, it's going to be many layers of smoky flavor. A brown roux, a somewhat dark roux, is an essential ingredient in the gumbo. Roux are quite often used as a thickener, but the darker the roux, the more time it is spent cooking, and the more time the roux spends cooking, the less thickening power it actually has. So the roux is going to act as a thickener. I'm also going to add an ingredient popular in Cajun and Creole cooking. I'm going to add some okra. I'm using some okra in my gumbo, both to help flavor and thicken the gumbo. So to get them ready, I just cut off the tips and the tails. That's the tip where it was attached to the plant. These skinny little tails can sometimes get funny too. So I just like to cut them off. I'm cutting my okra into roughly about 1/4 of an inch rounds. And I'm using about a 1/2 pound of okra for my gumbo here. Move my gumbo over to a back burner to keep simmering. And while that simmers together, I'm going to warm up a frying pan. I'm going to brown those sausage pieces. It's my oil is hot. I'm going to add my andouille. sausage is already cooked. It's really a matter of getting like a color and a texture to it. These have a little color on them, and they're all kind of firmed up a little bit. And take them off the heat because I don't want them to render out too much of their fat. Move my gumbo back to the camera burner. Show you me adding back all that grease, all that sausage. Add back my chicken that I shredded up earlier. And I'm going to add my okra. Again, if okra is not your thing, don't use it. You do you, I'll do me. It's all good. All right, I'm going to use this camera to show you my one other step here. Well, while this pan that the andouille was in, take some of my broth. I'm just going to loosen up those bits on the bottom. And then I'm going to pour that into my gumbo. Not waste any flavor. All right, I'm just going to keep this on like a medium-low, kind of a low simmer. And I'm going to get some white rice going because you got to have some white rice for gumbo. This has been simmering with the sausage and chicken and the okra for probably a good 40 minutes. And it's looking really good to me. I'm ready to put some in a bowl and eat it. So the way I like to handle this situation is I like to take a little bit of rice. And I'm going to go for some ladles of gumbo over my rice. I just saw a bay leaf. That reminds me. This is the time to take out the bay leaf. I like to go just a little more rice on top of my gumbo. And then just a little sprinkle of those green onion tops over the whole thing. All right, I'm really excited to dig into this. I've been thinking about it ever since I made the andouille, which was, started making that days ago. But I've decided a while ago about making this around Mardi Gras. Happy Fat Tuesday if you're watching this live. Anyway, cheers. Broth is so good. Flavors the rice. It's got a lot of smokiness to this dish. Get a piece of chicken. Man, it's really hot. Crazy, that chicken, it's got the grilled taste even throughout all this. It's adding some of its grilled taste to all of this, but you can still taste it when you eat the chicken. And same with the andouille. You taste the smokiness. It's different than the grill flavor on the chicken, but you really taste it on the sausage. And again, it's lending a lot of flavor to the whole gumbo here. Yeah, and I like the viscosity of the broth. Some people say okra can make things slimy, and I could kind of see the mucilaginous strands when I was stirring it. It's really just the right amount, because the dark roux does not thicken things as well as the light roux. Most of its thickening powers have been sort of cooked out of it. It still has some thickening ability, but that combined with this okra, it's just enough that it's not overwhelming. So this is delicious. I'm glad I grilled the chicken. I almost was lazy and just did the boiling for the broth, because honestly, that's what a lot of people will probably do. But I thought of how much better it would be. And I know a lot of people that watch my channel also watch a lot of the barbecue channels out there. So I decided I should cook with fire, since everything's always better when you cook it with fire. That gumbo was awesome. I highly recommend trying to make that sometime. You can taste the grilled chicken when you got a bite of chicken. You can taste the smokiness on the andouille when you got a bite of sausage. And oh, that fat was rendered perfectly. It's still had a bit of a, it hadn't rendered to liquid, but it was just soft butter. And the texture of the broth was perfect. It was rich, thickened just right, smoky, absolutely delicious. One of the best things I've made in a while. Happy Fat Tuesday. If you like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you like this kind of content. And whatever you do, make sure you're putting some love into the food you're making. Peace.